You know, if you lose 10 clients, that costs you $1 million.
Welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. Today we're going to talk about growth in 2024, growing your business economy, growing your personal economy. And today my special guest is managing partner of Pro CFO Partners, Ryan Walter. And let me tell you a little bit about him. His expertise is in strategic execution, cross-functional team leadership, business transformation. And let me tell you guys, transformation is hard, right? And operational and process improvement, scaling. And I like talking about this because your number one, generally what business owners don't get, your number one investment is the business, right? And that's what you need to fix, okay? And as a matter of fact, I'm going to let you tell the rest of your story, Ryan. So, Ryan, welcome to the Practical Wealth Show. And tell me a little about your journey, your background, and, what you did before you got the Pro CFO, and give them the get us up to this point, and then we're going to help these people grow and scale their enterprises.
Well, great. Curtis, first, thank you for having me. I'm really excited and appreciate the opportunity to get to talk. I know I'm really also interested in learning from you today. So, look forward to that. I think you did a great job introducing me, and probably I should pay you to do that from now on for me. So thank you very much for such a kind introduction. Without having to date myself too much, I would say, most of my career has really come down to helping organizations execute on their major strategy, significant change, particularly enterprise change management, and that what I'd call transformation across the organization. These are always some of the hardest things to achieve. It's really easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. How do we make the big stuff happen? That's often the hardest because it takes us out of that common day-to-day mode that we're in. And so I was doing that for a long time, just various formats in global roles for both small and large companies. And then most recently, before I was here, I was actually running my own consulting organization where I helped really with an operational slant, organizations in the small to mid-sized business range execute on their strategy. I felt it was an area that was being underserved and really enjoyed that work, and get to continue that now here with Pro CFO Partners with a wonderful financial lens. And we're here to help organizations really deliver on that journey and leverage finance as a catalyst for growth.
See, I love that. See, leveraging finance as a catalyst for growth. Because see, Ryan, what we say, and I want you to expand on this, the numbers, most people don't watch their numbers. They don't watch one of the things I was at a conference, and your founding partner was speaking, yep. Right? And I was just like, amening. Because Ryan was in the background. Who's this guy up here that's, all fired up about this number thing, right? And but the numbers tell a story. Financial literacy is accounting, and people they're too busy. You can outsource it, but you need to know what's going on. But you need to watch the numbers. Because it's not what you earn is what you keep, right? And so from a philosophical standpoint, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing out there? In the marketplace with the companies that your organization is serving, because I think, business is business, right? It doesn't matter the type of business that fundamentally they all work the same way. You just sell different stuff. So those y'all think, well, my business is different. No, it's not. Right? So, and if it's, I don't care if you're a landscaper, and you're generating $60,000 or $100,000 a year of rep, it's the same stuff. And is that accurate, or am I crazy? First of all, let's answer that question. That's debatable. So I might be crazy.
No, you're not crazy. I promise you're not crazy. And I think you're right. I mean, managing your finances, and I think there's kind of two lenses to this, is critical. But there's the part around looking back, understanding what's happened, making sure the right controls are in place. You don't really want to be surprised by things, and I think that's really helpful, and that's key. And I think both of these that I'll go into really get to, it's hard, right? Owners wear 1,000 hats. You can't be an expert in everything. In fact, you're probably more an expert in your service or your product than you are in running the business. And as business gets larger and more complex, it only adds to that. There are various roles throughout the financial organization that, play a key part in what we need to do. We don't always know what they are. And I think that's a real challenge, because it's not really about the title, right? It's about the role and what they're doing and how they're contributing to the, operation of the business. I think another lens is really that forward-looking lens. I always like to joke that, our job is to stare out the windshield with the owner of a business and help us figure out where we're getting and how we're going to get there. And a lot of that, we can use finance to help support that. It's about making the right choices and looking at things, not only from a financial lens, but from a business lens, to decide how we're going to get to where we are going. Where do we need to make the right investments? What kind of return should we be expecting? If we are looking at growth, how are we going to get there? Because almost all growth comes from some form of investment. A lot of my clients ask around, what's the right investment? Where should I be placing my, my chips when I go to do this? Should I be hiring headcount? Should I not? Is it just about revenue, top line growth? If I'm thinking about exiting in 5 to 10 years, what matters? There's a lot of that real, what's going to happen? How am I getting to where I want to go? And if done right, finance can really, as we mentioned, be that catalyst to help get you there, particularly if, you can get that finance and accounting function really set up and humming for you both today and into the future.
So you said something, get you there, right? But that's presupposing that they have it there in mind, right? And I know, right? And I know one of the things that you do with goal planning, annual planning goals, start with that, because that's I remember I saw it was either brochure or talk you had, like you got to begin with the end in mind. And so
absolutely, I mean, I think every time we start with someone, we start with, what are your strategies and goals? Where are you trying to get? Right, obviously start with the end in mind. I am not the one to coin that term. I think we all can go back to sort of where that began, but otherwise, how do you know if you're making choices to get to where you want to go? I can sit here, or anyone can sit here and give you advice. Does that really achieve where you want to be? And I think that starts with thinking regularly about, where am I trying to take the organization? What are my priorities and what's driving me for where I want to go? Not only now, but 3 years, 5 years into the future. And yes, obviously there's a lot uncertain about the future, but you need that target. What kind of organization do you want to be? And I think there's a little fear sometimes in defining that, because maybe we don't have the answer, or we don't know how we're going to do it. But it's the difference in, maybe it's a spooky, scary woods you're walking in, and you have to get to the other end. Would you rather have a flashlight that kind of steers the way and lets you, you may have to, maybe trees down and you're going to have to switch directions sometime, or do you want to walk around aimlessly in the dark and just bump into things, and maybe you'll end up on the wrong side when you get out? And I think that's really important, because if you don't start with that, you don't know where you're going to end, and you can't align your decisions to reaching that goal.
Yeah, I think that you have to be moving. I was always taught, activity produces knowledge. Knowledge doesn't produce activity. So you have to have a cheap, definite aim, so that you're going in a direction, and then you can adjust, as needed. So instead of, use the airplane analogy, when it takes off, the airplane's off target like 90% of the time. So they're constantly, the wind is changing, the this and that. We're going into an election year, and and we don't know what's going on, but you need to know where you want to go, and then you go in that direction, and then you adjust. Like, is that kind of, and how should they be thinking about that? Maybe so this is what we would be talking about. We were just having a beer somewhere. This is kind of what I would be talking about. I would be firing back and forth questions like this, but I like, thinking about that, and hopefully I'll get some ideas of just, you got to plan, but you got to adjust. That's not even a question in there, but
I think I can help you there. I think I know where you're going, but I want to start with, I think you made a great point about the plane, and I look at it as I think motion is really important. To me,
Mm-hmm.
motion a lot easier to move with a direction and change than be trying to do it from a standstill. I liken it
Mm-hmm.
to riding a bike, right? You ride your bike, maybe you got to make a turn, but if you're moving, okay. You try to balance on that bike sitting still and then turn the wheel, it's never going to work. It's a lot easier when we have something in a tailwind behind us to make that turn and make that adjustment. We're going to adjust, and I think we have to expect that, right? It's that unfortunately that fear of the unknown that holds us from making decisions and choices actually can really double down as a problem, because then the organization doesn't move. The organization has kind of said, good enough is good enough. We're going to stay where we're at. I think when it comes to that, riffing on the strategy, often when we're talking with people, it's about asking questions. It's about trying to
Right.
understand why are you in business? A lot of people might say, "Oh, my goal is to raise revenue 50%." Why? Why not 100%? Why not 200%? Where does that number come from? What does that mean? What is the goal? Are you trying to dominate the East Coast? Are you trying to sell the business in 3 years? Are you trying to acquire someone? Are you trying to get into a new market? Like, what is it that's driving where you want to go? And again, I think by asking good interrogative questions and also asking the contrary, it's like, well, do you want to be this? Okay, well, a no answer is good. It helps us get that clarity. You mentioned it earlier. They're busy. They're doing a lot of tactical things. Sometimes we just don't even take the time. And when we
Right.
can finally even open up our minds and just spend a little bit of time and let your mind circle through where things are, where I want to go, you can get there. You've just got to free up that mental space. If we were sitting down having a coffee between us, one of the first things I always ask someone is, look, if it's 5 years from now and we're high-fiving because like you have the business exactly where you want it, what does it look like? What's happening? Why are you so happy? And then, starting to work backwards from there. I think it's really important. There's so many studies from around the world that show when you can envision the goal and when you can envision where you want to be, that ideal state, you are motivated on both mental, physical, and a number of levels to get there, to have that to aim for. When you don't have a goal in mind, it's really hard to get motivated to that point. But if you can envision, hey, what's it going to be like standing on top of the podium with a gold medal on my neck? That gets you up every morning. That gets you, your 2-a-day trainings or whatever you're trying to do from an athletic perspective. I think that is where often, there's a little bit of fear, maybe because of just lack of time to think about it, but also maybe a little fear of, well, I don't really know, and I'm supposed to be the owner or the leader, and I don't have that answer. That's okay that you don't, but you're hurting yourself if you don't try to come up with it. And it's okay to admit you don't know. That's not one of those things you got to keep secret, no one can know about. Use your peers, find out. You'll be so much better off thinking about that. And if you adjust, you adjust. But it's better than sort of, let's just see where we end up with and aimlessly wandering through the desert for 40 years until you figure out, where you are.
Yes. And then I want to talk about measurable targets, but I want to make a point there. So if you're hearing this, I want you to understand, well, let's say you're still working a job when you hear this. You're in business, right? Your household is a business. You have to run your household like a business. So what is your outcome that you want to have in next year, 3 years, 5 years? How money you want to come in the house? How much passive income do you? How much you want to pay down your what I call non-preferred debt, right? So you should be thinking about that. And if you take more of are you looking at your budget, or what we like to call, Ryan, your cash flow map? And I know we've talked about forecasting. We call it telling you, in our system, we call it telling your money where to go instead of asking where it went. And I know that y'all are big on not just looking at history, right? Because people look at their P&L, that's history. I mean, you need to look at the P&L.
P&Ls are fine, but I'll tell you, if you're not staring out the windshield, figuring out how it's going to get you to where you go, you're basically going to be repeating what you've done in previous years. It doesn't tell you. I mean, you might learn some things, and I'm not saying there's not important information there, but I think one of the fundamental things we work with all organizations on is budget isn't like take 3% of last year and that's what we're going to do. Your budget should be tied to your plan. You should be able to point to that budget and say, how does this investment get us to where we're going? I can see how by playing, an investment in this headcount gets this return, so we expect this revenue and this net profit. We're going to go down this path and invest X amount. We expect a return over 2 years or whatever that would be. You got to be thinking about that because, again, we don't have unlimited funds. We can only place so many bets, and your budget really should be tied into that. We've run into organizations who, same staff, same way of doing things, and just assume, well, we're going to go up 20% next year. Why? What's changing? How are you getting there? What's good? I hope you do. That would be terrific. But that's kind of just like hoping I win the lottery. Unless you have something that can point to where that's coming from. There's cost to new business. There's cost to retaining clients. As we get larger, there's new costs that we don't even think about when we're smaller. That's why scale is so critical. And not planning for that. We often see, when organizations run into that flex point where what got us here won't get us there. And you better be thinking about, great, I grew to this point, but if I want to be that next thing, I want to be a 10 million, not a $5 million company, there's a good chance whatever you did to get to 5 million really won't help you get to 10 million. You're going to have to look at it a different way. You're going to have to consider new markets, whatever that may be. And if you're going to have to do that, then you can't assume you're going to keep operating the same way. You better figure out how you're going to leverage, those resources, those investments you make to get to that point.
It's funny you say that. I'm going through my fourth reading of 10x is easier than 2x. So that's kind of like my thought process. And one of the things is if you're going to grow, if you want to double, you can do the same things you're already doing, just more of them, right? Mm-hmm. But if you want to do 10x, you can't do the same stuff. It forces you, like I've got to, what must I stop doing? What's 80% of stuff I've got to let go and focus on my top 20%? Who's my, Dan Sullivan calls it your biggest check. Like what's the biggest client you work with, and make that your norm, not the exception, that kind of thing. And I think that, cause I want to pull out things he's saying that you can apply, into your personal life. If you're thinking, well, I'm too small for a CFO, it's the same. Okay. Is what I want you to see is, and one of the things you talk about is, this is from the website, revenue modeling, but see yourself as your customer does. Okay. Mm-hmm. What problem are you solving for them? Like I always say, if you can't articulate that 90 words or less, you don't have a business, right? Because you're swimming in the sea of sameness. You don't have a unique selling proposition. Do you talk about that with your people and expand on, tell them what you mean by that?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, it's one of the first things in month one we do with all of our engagements, our clients, is understand their revenue and business model. This is how you go to market. This is how you make money. But I think to the point you're talking about, this is why clients buy from you. We often all think special, this is why, but there are reasons why you're selected. There's reasons why that goes in, and you need to understand that because one, there's going to be ongoing competitive pressures. Two, new ideas and new concepts, do they align with that, right? Just because opportunities will come up, just because they come up doesn't mean you're going to get the same return. We have organizations you work with, they've done well in one area. Oh, this other area that, that's adjacent to it comes up, we can naturally go in, right? We're going to vertically integrate or whatever we're going to do. But, if your competitive differentiator doesn't support that, you've got to ask yourself, is that really going to give us the same result we expect? We can't, it's sort of, past results doesn't guarantee future success. Right. It's that same kind of concept where you really have to understand what makes you unique and how you stay on top of that. So going back to your point of, it's a bit of doubling down on that to understand why people buy from you, but also understanding, where do you earn? Where does that come from? What information do you have to make the right decisions as you go forward? How do you make a sale? What does it cost to make a sale? What does it cost to make the next sale? What does it cost to keep or lose a client? There's so much around there, and whether you're getting things through marketing or getting things through, salespeople, looking at that and really understanding that and understanding where that comes from, because that's really defined also by your market and what you're doing. But I think there's just real criticality, because if you don't understand what that model is, it's easy to come up with any plan. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. But to me, that really anchors you to kind of your core base to say, is this really in line with what we're doing? Maybe there's opening of new channels. That's great. Maybe there's finding a new market fit for your product, and that's terrific, right? You're there, but you can't also assume that market fit's going to return the same. You don't know, if you sold something in the marine area for boats, and now you think you can sell it into bridges. That's great. Maybe it can be used for bridges because they're both in areas of a lot of water. I don't know, but it doesn't mean the buying process is the same there. It doesn't mean you can charge the same amount because they may not, the market may not support it. So understanding, markets and what makes you unique is critical, because if you don't, it's really easy to kind of end up down a path where it just doesn't align to who you are.
Let me add a thought on it, because I was listening to something with Dan Kennedy. Jay Abraham says this, that you should see your business like a little hedge fund, right? And so when I always tell people your business is your number one investment, so what you just said, like there's markets, there's like, I would tell people, look, before I'd have you put money into a SEP IRA or something like that, I would have you invest in a marketing campaign. A lot of times people have is what I call hidden marketing assets, where they'll have let's say you got 5,000 people on a mailing list and you don't talk to your clients, your existing customers. And what if you could get each of them to spend $10 a month, half of those 5,000, that's new revenue with, because you've already got the client. And do you find people just they're always going after new people, and do they look at their business and go, all right, I could pull these levers and generate another 100,000, 150 million out of my business? I mean, depending on the size of the business. I mean, are they looking at that, or always trying to get new ones?
Well, you're right. And I think there's a miss on 2 points when it comes to existing clients. One, there is often chance to sell more, right? To sell additional that may be there. We lose track. It comes a little bit by spending the time to understand your clients, understand where those additional needs are, so you can figure that out. Mm-hmm. And we'll point to the other side, which is the cost to lose a client and in essence regain another to replace them is much higher in almost every situation than it is to retain one. It's different in every industry and it's different in every situation. But the cost to both go out, prospect, find a new client, bring them in, build up the trust, or whatever you're doing with them, will almost always be, on magnitudes larger than keeping. I think people miss out on this too. I mean, let's think about it. We'll keep it really simple. Let's say you're a $10 million company, and really easily we'll say every client you've got if I do my math right, you got 100 clients who each bring in $100,000. Let's just say relatively flat, you get the same kind of return from each one, the same kind of profitability. If you lose 10 clients, that costs you $1 million. And so let's say each year you got a 10% attrition. If you could just do a little better, and whether it's maybe the quality of your product or your customer service or whatever that may be, and you can take that from 10% to 5%, you just saved yourself, you didn't have to find $500,000. And I can almost guarantee you're not going to have to put $500,000 in the business just to retain that, let alone what might be new opportunities in what you have. How can you go deeper? I think often, though, to go deeper, you've got to understand where those challenges and problems are. Where can you get in? And I think often we look at this like relationship with clients as a transaction. You buy, we're done. And I get it may not be a one-on-one, but the more you can understand the needs of a client, the more you can see where there's new opportunity with them as well. Maybe taking something you have, looking at it a different way, understanding their pain points. And again, just back to that simple example, that 500,000, beyond what it's going to cost you to find new clients, imagine what happens if you spend that, keep, the 100 or 200,000 you're going to need to keep those 5 clients, and then also you reap the rewards of what other kind of growth can come out of it.
Yeah, one of the things that I look at, that I've learned to look at, and I'll talk to some of our business owners, clients, they don't view retention as a profit center. and they should. I mean, like I heard some guy talk one time. It was what is his name? It was Dan Candy's partner. It was Bill Glazier, right? And so I was at a meeting with him, and I remember I had an old journal. He had 27 separate client retention reactivation strategies. 27. And I remember in my journal, I go, how many do I have? Do I have any? You know, and so, and I told people, I said, y'all see it all the time. So for example, if you go to Jiffy Lube and you don't come back like within that little time within the sticker says to come back, you get a little postcard. Hey, we miss you. $5 off your next visit. Make sure you come in and get your thing scheduled, and you'll do it. It's like a collection day. So you'll send out like 3 of those, and that's retention, right? And so big businesses are doing it. Even though they do a lot of dumb things, you need to do it. That's an easy little thing that you could do that might boot. And then, you know, when you get back in, they upsell you. Oh, you need this, you need transmission change. And, you know, they're generating new money off the people. And so it's how that's like becoming more efficient in what you're already doing. You're not even spending new money.
And it's the whole working smarter, not harder too, right? To get the new. I mean, I think, you know, one of the questions I've always asked someone is, why are you losing people? Do you know why? You know, perhaps, you know, use the Jiffy Lube example. I don't know. Let's just say that every new client, 75% come back and 25% don't. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know the number. But you probably could figure out with a little effort, you know, what percent, you know, might have that come down to. They probably would have if they got the reminder card, right? You know, and then maybe there's some who they're always chasing just the next deal. And maybe those are clients you don't want. And that's okay. You know, you might find the cost of retention in certain cases aren't there. But it's just the act of actually going in and exploring. You might find that they didn't even realize you did certain services, right? And maybe, you know, educating them would work. To that point, that might be where that card comes in. Or, you know, maybe it's the other thing of like building a little bit on there to say, hey, here's a referral program. If, you know, how hard could it be to like send the card and also say, you know, 50% off your next oil change if you refer someone in. So there's a lot. I mean, you already have those addresses, you have that information, you have those ways to grow. And again, I'm not a marketer. There's a lot of great ways to kind of tie into that. But I do encourage people, you know, look at that, understand why things are there. And look, I think there will always be some natural attrition you probably can't fight again. I don't know anybody who retains 100% of their clients and believes they could always retain 100% of their clients. But there's so much in understanding why, and particularly to the stuff you can control, getting in there, because you will, like I said, I can promise you, not only will it cost you a lot less with that effort, there's so much upwards benefit from it, from, again, retention, word of mouth, additional services. You really have to pay attention to that.
Yeah. I'm looking at, like, what I love is that, like, if you go to their website, they've got like a beautiful model of the thought process they walk clients through that I love. So I've been picking and choosing, but I'm gonna read it because I just think it's goal strategies, revenue model, which, you know, I love, financial reporting, my favorite, cash management, profit management. Like all of that. So when I look at business, right, I always talk and teach people to think in 3 parts. And I got this from Dean Jackson: before, during, and after. And before is the market, and marketing is a system, right? Then there's the during. So during to me means the sales process and operations. And then after is keeping them, orchestrating referrals to bring them, you know, because once you get them, the goal is not to let them leave and then just work on becoming more efficient running machines so that you develop systems so you can, you know, I always like, how can I work myself out of a job? Because if I have to do it, I don't have a business. I'm just self-employed, right? I don't. Are you finding that a lot of people, these entrepreneurs, here's the thing I find, or I've heard, we met through Vicious, so I see this a lot. People think they're going to have these big exits, but their business is not positioned for somebody to buy them because it's still based around you're running all your personal finances through the business. You're, you know, do you see that? And how, let's say they're whether they want to sell the business or not, what, because they need to be thinking like what, 3 years, 5 years in the future, but they need to start operating like that today. How do you find that, and how do you get them to start to think like that if they start working with you?
Well, I mean, to start with, I tell everybody, you're going to exit your business at one point sometime. I promise you it's going to happen. May not be in 3 to 5 years, but I can promise you. And it's always more complex, and getting in front of this and making decisions is important, because there's, a lot of groundwork that has to be laid. There's a lot of things you mentioned, the way the organization's structured, value, what they're expecting for it. There's a lot that, when we talk to, I think probably most business owners overvalue the business and what they think the market will pay for the business. There's getting it to a point and understanding what that market values and getting the structure set up. You talked about our flywheel and how we leverage that to work through there. I think there's a key part to owners who are at the hub of everything. Think about it. If you were going to buy a business and the owner sits in the middle of everything and it can't do much without the owner, what's the value of that business, right? So how do you build a business that sustains? Quite honestly, and I say this a little trite, can your business sustain without you? I think that's a huge goal. If your business can run and work without you, that puts you in a really good spot to start. Then there's obviously keys in the way the organization runs, and from the standpoint of revenue, profitability, and other things that get into value. But you have to think forward. You're not going to be able to in maybe you'll get lucky, but most people in 6 months are not going to be able to just sell their business for the way they want to sell it. If look, I'm hoping I get 10 million in return. I'd like to be out in 3 years. You've now drawn the picture of where you want to be. We can say, well, where do you need to be at that point to be out? Great. We can now work backwards to figure out what needs to be happening. How far off are we? What needs to occur? You need to bolster certain things. You're going to need to find new revenue. You have to start. You might even need to find capital and make an investment to grow to a certain point to get to that. That's where that forward looking is so important. Having that goal, I think, gets back to what we talked about earlier. Is with that vision in mind, it's a lot easier to achieve it. If again you come out, and we give the same advice to people even with lines of credit, and there's other reasons we talk about, like you never want to get a line of credit when you need it because it's the worst time. And I'm not saying whether you should get one or not, but for folks who might want cash at a point, to invest in the business, hey, you want to be thinking about that ahead of time. You want to be thinking about what that may be and how we get there, because business is going to move at the pace of business. And I can promise you it's probably going to move slower than you want it to. Right. And we've seen it a lot when we talk to organizations, most are pretty good. They understand it's far enough off and they're good starting to think about it. We've seen the odd ones where they kind of expect a pretty quick turnaround. And it's just, you have to be honest and say, look, we can try and maybe, but I think we also have to be realistic that, it's like anything. We can want the world to work a certain way, but if we go and look, what's the situation like in the world most of the time, it works this way. So we probably, shouldn't really expect that to happen. And let's do the best we can to kind of guide us the direction we want.
I love that. Brian, what haven't I asked you? I want you to go into a little bit about what y'all do, because I think there's a lot of lessons just in that. But what haven't I asked you, general business stuff that you want to get out there in the ether, that you want to say that people think about going into 2024 and preparing for, a turbulent year? What should they be thinking about? What do you want to share with them?
I think one of the things we talked about a little bit was, when it comes to budget, I think it's important, but it is, again, making sure that budget really represents how you're going to get to where you want to go. You should be able to look at that and understand, the return you expect and so forth. And then where I think that goes to naturally is, are you measuring? What are you looking for? And one of the things you kind of quipped about the P&L looking backwards, I agree, is what are those key forward-looking metrics that help you understand if you're performing the way you want? Are you going where you want? So you can make those choices. This, again, is about looking forward. Things like pipeline are critical, right? If you got a good sense of where things deliver, how often, you probably can better predict where that's at. I think that those key metrics, a bit of that forecasting to know where's your cash going to be. What does that 13-week cash outlook look like? And the reason, look, obviously cash is king, and we all understand that when it comes to running the business. But the reason I think that's even more important is I've seen so many businesses suffer through death by 1,000 paper cuts because cash is always lean, and they make these interim decisions that, I know it's like anything, right? If you're hurt and you have to make a really quick decision out there and you got to do something, it'd be great. But in the long run, you may not keep the arm, but you saved yourself while you were there. Well, it's the same thing here. You make a lot of these things that make sense in the moment, but what you've done is kind of spun yourself out and you're not heading anywhere in the direction you want to get to. And people then ask, why aren't we where you want to be? And it's because every month you were making these whipsaw choices to get to where you want to go. So I think being able to have those key metrics that help you plan for the future and help you adjust. When I ski, I learned to ski in my 40s, which was a great time to learn how to ski because I learned with fear and I learned what it was like for it to hurt if you fell versus kids. And so when I ski, I look way out ahead. I want to know 200 yards ahead of me, is there a tree? Because I can start turning now and it's a really easy, I can turn my ski tips 3 inches to the left. I'm going to be fine 200 yards out. It's not a problem. I don't want to try to turn quickly, 10 feet in front of me. It's really hard to make those quick changes. So if I can be watching things and getting the right stuff that really helps indicate where I'm going so I can adjust and monitor, because you're going to have to adjust. Like no matter what we want to do, you're going to have to adjust. I think that's critical. So making sure you're looking at the right leading information, you're looking at information that's telling you about how you're performing, what that means for where you're going. Again, we forecast and plan to help us get there. We understand almost no forecast ever happens 100% of the time. But again, it's more of a tool to better help us make those decisions and choose how we will respond versus, something coming up we've never thought about. And then we make that quick knee-jerk decision to move forward and don't understand how it impacts our plan and where we want to go. I think that's probably the other key one for folks about that forward-looking, making sure you're looking at the right things, making sure you know what those informed decisions are. And I think the key is if you get the right kind of insight, you can make the most informed decisions. And that's what a lot of our owners ask us. I know I need to make a choice. I know I need to make a bet. What's the right kind of, insight and informed information I can get to do that?
I love that. Yeah, I love that analogy. I think that you've got to look, it's like, because like looking at just your budget or your P&L is like driving a car forward, but you're looking through the rearview mirror. Mm-hmm. And you want to see where you're going. And so we say in our business, tell your money where to go instead of asking where it went. How often would you have people look at that? Like, what are they looking at and how often? And it's good, like with you, they're having somebody look at it with them. So you got to get organized so you have the numbers, but you look at them monthly, weekly, quarterly, like how?
Again,
quarterly is the attorney.
It's obviously different by some businesses, but I think, having a process monthly where you're looking at things that you can track is important. And look, I would say don't go longer than quarterly because too much can change and a lot can happen. I think we've all seen examples, particularly in these larger corporate cases, where all of a sudden you have these massive layoffs. And I can tell you in almost all of them, they saw this stuff coming. And it was like, we're going to have rose-colored glasses and the world's going to change. And you know what? If they'd adjusted better and thought more, you wouldn't deal with these kind of like rip the Band-Aid off solutions that we end up coming down to.
Right.
So, looking at it regularly, where are we? What's looking right? It also means you can course correct, right? So if we're looking at, hey, pipeline looks great here. If this delivers as we expect, it'll be fine. But in this area, it's not, let's figure out why and what are we going to do now? And so that effort, it's like, putting seed in fertile soil. Now we can make sure we're putting it in the right place because we know in 6 months or 9 months when those deals might close, we're going to hit our numbers and we're going to feel better. And we're going to make the right choice at that point versus, you look at it once a year, we run a budget and then we don't look at it until the next year. What good is it at this point? Why do we even go through the exercise at that stage? If you're not going to leverage these things to help you make decisions regularly, and again, help you course correct as you need to.
I was talking to this woman one time who had like a coffee shop, and I said, well, didn't even have a P&L, didn't talk to the accountant, had no bookkeeper. Well, how do you look? And I was like, what do you mean you don't look at it? How do you, like if you're not working all the time, how do you track your inventory? How do you like the numbers tell a story. If we were in a bar business, I'd looked at my P&L every week, and it was just a spiraling notebook. It was like in, out, right? And then, but once I learned how to read the numbers, I was like, okay, here's my revenue. Here is my cost of goods sold. Here's what I made. Here is how much liquor or beer I've sold. And then I started to understand the ratios of, wait, okay, for every dollar I bought in beer, I should have $5 in the register, and I started to, and I could even imagine going a month without looking at that, let alone a quarter or whatever, because you could be out of business because you're getting, like we used to have just to put this in perspective, y'all, what I mean by watching your numbers, and if your hair salon, if you're doing what are those things called? I forget what you call it. Perms, right? There's chemicals, right? So you can get a certain amount of heads out of that jar of whatever. And I ran to a guy that he measured that, so then you could tell if people were giving away free stuff doing their hair, but collecting the money and not putting it in the the register. The same thing with the bars. I could see that, and you could see the trends. I needed to know. All right, I know it's seasonal, and we're going to have a good December with New Year's, and then I know January is going to be flat. So I got to prepare for that. After New Year's, I'm going to be flat until like the next big holiday, which is Valentine's Day. And I had to plan, I had to do parties, I had to do stuff to kind of keep my revenue up and create special events. And you can't just sit pat. You gotta make stuff happen. So Ryan, this has been awesome. Tell them about Pro CFO, maybe a little about the people that that should be, you're hearing this and like, I need help. Who should you be talking to, and a little about that, and then tell them how to get in touch with you.
Great, thank you very much. Well, it's been a pleasure being on, and just in short, we provide part-time fractional CFOs to all kinds of companies, usually small to mid-sized businesses, to really help them achieve their goals and strategies. It's about having that extra partner, that person to stare out the windshield with you, and really turn finance into that catalyst for growth. All of our CFOs have 10 to 20 years as a CFO, and they bring that experience. And we have over 50 CFOs on the team, so we're able to really match the right CFO to the right situation to help organizations achieve those goals and really turn finance into something that most people think is just about managing and reducing costs to being that true catalyst for growth. So those who are interested in contacting me would welcome if you reach out. I'm reachable at ryan.walter@procfopartners.com. Also, if you'd like to give me a call, I'm at 856-236-9723.
Okay. And what's the website?
It's procfopartners.com.
Okay, so check that out. They have a really cool site. They have a looks like a podcast where they have a lot of really cool things. Like, you're a host. Are you still hosting that podcast?
So I'm on. We have someone who runs that for us. I'm on several episodes, but I would say check out the other ones. I think some of our other CFOs have much better shows than I have. There's a lot of great stuff. I would encourage people. We have free tools out there, whether it's 13-day cash flow projections or doing your strategies and goals and working on your business model. We have probably almost every subject cover from the podcast, from nonprofits to manufacturing to working in a down economy to what do you do when interest rates are up. So I would just encourage anyone who's interested. It's all there. We love being and seeing the journey companies are on, and we love sharing our information. So please, whatever you can gain from it, please have at it.
Yeah, see, reach out, because even if you're smaller and you don't ready achieve, just so you make sure you understand, a chief financial officer is what CFO is, and you don't feel you're ready for that, they have such great information that you could learn a lot just watching their free stuff, and you can grow, and then that'll get you ready to actually use them, because now your business has grown so much.
Well, and I would tell you, we get folks who contact us, and the CFO may not be right for them, may not be where they are, but I'm always happy to talk to someone. We love helping. You might need something else. Maybe you just need a good bookkeeper. Maybe that's where you need to be. We'll get you in contact with someone who's right for you. It's not us, but that's okay. Right. We like I said, we love the journey. Whether we have a part in it or not, doesn't matter. What we want is everybody to enjoy that journey of business ownership And if we can be of help in any way, even if it's just as a sounding board, please feel free to reach out.
Yes, that is awesome. And so, reach out, because, you get a chance to have a conversation with people that look at hundreds of businesses every day. And so there's nothing new under the sun. And what is perplexing you, somebody has already solved that problem. And you just need, another experienced set of eyes on your stuff that can, again, be a sounding board. I think it's a great process. And then, what I want you to do, guys, if this is for you, I want you to reach out to them. I want you to follow Ryan's stuff and their company stuff. If you run to somebody and they, wow, sounds like Joe, he needs help with this, I want you to forward this episode to them, right? And let them get to know Ryan and Pro CFO Partners, and we'll be on again. We may be doing some events together in 2024, but I think this is such a fascinating subject. I think they do such a great job in their space. And I was excited to bring Ryan on and just get this information out there, because I think they're hidden. They're not that hidden, but they're hidden. So I don't want him to be not hidden, because I think he can solve a lot of people's problems if he's out there. So I want to be a catalyst for introduce you to somebody that can help you. Ryan, thank you
and I'd just like to say thank you. It's been a real pleasure being on. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about something I'm really passionate about, and hopefully people can take a nugget here out and it'll help them along their journey.
Yes. So guys, listen, go out there. I want you to, as we record this, is towards the end of 2024. So this is a good time to contemplate, what you are trying to get done, where you are, whether it's your personal economy or your business economy, and set some goals. Look at your numbers. What are the things that can move the needle? I tell people in business, the three things that move the needle are sales, marketing, and systems, or team building, right? And so from just a broad base, and then you can go down in there. But you got to market, you got to sell to people that your marketing brings in, and you got to build teams, right? And so those are things that grow revenue. And just understand, your business is your number one investment. It's not giving it to some fund manager you ain't never met 1,000 miles away. All right. As I don't care what your wealth manager told you, your best investments in your business. So call Ryan and he'll show you how to make that so. All right, guys, listen, be prosperous, and I'll see you next week.